first, I'm joined by Sol Freeman. He is the anti-Semitism campaigner who has launched a 48-hour boycott of Twitter in protest to their response to Wiley's anti-Semitic tweets. Now, Sol, this is such an important thing you're doing. Of course, some people will choose to take part in it, others won't. But I think one thing that we can say for certain, and who knows why, but social media platforms, including Twitter, don't seem to take anti-Semitism as seriously as other forms of racism online. It's pretty shocking and disgusting, isn't it?
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me on. I mean, obviously, Wiley's 48-hour anti-Jewish hate binge was an astonishing and distressing thing for any Jew, British or around the world, to witness. It's as a kind of an analogy. Sometimes we see those clips on social media where someone's been abusing someone, say on public transport, whether it's a Muslim woman or a black man, or sometimes a Jewish person. And invariably what happens is that a decent, courageous stand buyer gets up and says, "This is outrageous, stop." In the case of Wiley's 48-hour binge, and of course, when we see those clips, our faith in humanity is restored a bit, isn't it? Because we know that not everyone will be a bystander. But in the case of Wiley's 48-hour torrent of abuse, death threats, what we saw, in effect, was the world, or certainly the world that was controlling access to his platform, standing by. And of course, we all know that if you're a bystander, you're worse than that. You're an enabler. You're complicit in the racism. It was an astonishing thing to witness, and ultimately, of course, massively distressing. As a parent, of course, it's to know that my son has to see that. His friends will see that, and he has to deal with the consequences of that. And there are real world consequences.
But so the most shocking thing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Wiley is still on Twitter. He has not been permanently banned from Twitter.
No, absolutely. And I guess, this is a key part of why I felt the need to start the campaign. Because in a sense, what happens on social media, and it's not just Twitter, we're talking about Twitter, we're talking about Instagram, we're also talking about Facebook.
All the big social media sites.
Exactly, all the major social media sites. They're a bit like a pub on the outside that has a sign up saying no under 18s. And as a parent, as a responsible member of society, you think, good, sensible, that's a safe environment for safe, appropriate adult drinking. And then you go through the doors, and what you find is there's 12-year-olds being served vodka chasers. And that's what we're dealing with social media, with these companies.
Yes. But so what's so shocking is that the discrepancies, the disparities are so obvious, because we have seen over the past couple of months Twitter permanently remove people who have, for example, been accused of transphobia. And no matter what the rights and wrongs of that debate is, no one could look at those tweets sent by Wiley. And as you point out, there were so many of them, and they were vicious and revolting and disgusting and racist in so many ways. And he remains on the platform. So there seems to be a serious disconnect at Twitter, where they don't care about anti-Semitism in the same way that they care about transphobia or other forms of racism.
Well, I think it's without doubt empirically obvious to anyone who looks into social media that social media across the board is rife with hate speech on a number of levels. Now, anti-Semitism is prevalent, and we all know, of course, anti-Semitism isn't a new thing. It's existed for thousands of years, and it will almost certainly continue to exist for a good period of time. I'm not optimistic about anti-Semitism disappearing. The hatred of Jews has been a feature of many cultures over many centuries. So if you look on Twitter, you will find reams of anti-Semitism. I've spent upwards of 5 years now campaigning against anti-Semitism, and I'm very used to seeing it. I'm not shocked by it. I'm disturbingly neutral about it the more I see of it, because there is so much of it. But of course, there are torrents of hatred directed against all number of groups. Yeah. Now, My
And none of
specialism.
it's acceptable, but you can't act in one way towards one group and
Well,
then not towards people that are
well,
anti-Semitic.
I think what you'll find is, yes, of course, that there's going to be there are swings of causes that become popular, become fashionable,
Yeah.
and that people feel aligned to, and others that less so. But that certainly this campaign that I've launched is not. No part of the campaign is saying Twitter and other social medias are a safe space for anti-Jewish hatred, but they clamp down on other forms of hatred. Absolutely not. I'm not saying that, because all the evidence shows that Twitter and other social media platforms are as irresponsible and corporately negligent with a whole bunch of
Oh
hatreds.
no,
The
they are.
hatred.
They are, and it impacts people's mental health horrifically. So, can I just quickly check in with you about how this boycott is going? I've been seeing you seem to be getting a lot of support, a lot of high-profile journalists, some big West End productions, for example. You have also promised more action to come. What do you have planned next?
Absolutely. So, I mean, firstly, in terms of reaction, and here's a bit of context. Wiley has more followers on Twitter than there are Jews in the UK, about double actually. So there's a bit of context. So hence how the impact it makes on us as a group. We feel completely under threat from that. The reaction has, of course, been completely overwhelming. So myself and Tracy Ann Oberman sort of came up with the idea very late on Friday night. We then on Saturday morning spoke to a group of activists, fellow friends, colleagues, people we knew. Would they get involved? We had no idea that it would go this far, this fast. And I think that's really interesting. It tells us, obviously, it tells us that this has resonated for a reason, because people know that social media is toxic. They know it has terrible effects on both themselves and, probably more importantly, their children, the younger generation. So I think that's why it's escalated so rapidly, and it's been really heartwarming to see. And offer my personal thanks and humility to everyone that has stood with us so far. So, and it's been a fantastic thing to see. But of course, this isn't the end. Now, the objective here is to say to Twitter and the other social media companies, they need to sort their own houses out. Twitter's rules of engagement, their user regulations, clearly state that hate speech, abuse, and harassment are not allowed on the platform. But as I said, that's like having the sign that says no over 18s. You then have to enforce them. Now, we're not here to tell Twitter how to do that, or Instagram. They have corporate responsibility. They need to take that responsibility seriously and act upon it. Now, obviously, there's two ways of thinking about it, which is one, they probably won't do anything about it because, does a corporate entity have a moral center? You can debate that one until the cows come home. Probably not. So let's work on that assumption. Is the corporate entity concerned about its revenue, its bottom line? Well, yes, that's what it's there for. So, I think, a campaign like this clearly creates bad press. I'm here giving this interview on Talk Radio, and Tracy and Oberman and various other colleagues are off doing the same. That's bad press. Bad press is never good for a corporate entity. It threatens the bottom line. So it's a really clear and simple message to Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Get your own house in order. Now, government, of course, has a role to play in that. And the online harms bill is something that's been sort of kicking around as a kind of half alive zombie for a while. So we're also saying to political figures.
And you have had a lot of support, obviously, with Priti Patel speaking out. Sol Freeman, the anti-Semitism campaigner who launched this 48-hour boycott of Twitter to protest their response to Wiley's anti-Semitic rants. Thank you so much for being here.